Hello and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be building our own miniature version of Linux's grep command. So before we get started, let's just talk a little bit about grep, the standard grep command. So here we've got our newly compiled grep, we've got a main.cpp, which we'll be building out in the video, and I have a test files directory. So let me show you what our standard grep does. So if I wanted to look for something in the test files directory, I would do a grep-r for recursive, and I happen to know the word stuff is in there, and then I could pass in test files, and I'm going to get a list of test files with the word along with the output stuff. If I wanted to be a little more specific, I could say stuff3 and just print out that one. If I wanted to be case insensitive and get everything with the word stuff in it regardless of case, I would pass in an I. Now additionally, you can use pipe. So we're going to do test files test2.txt and then pipe that into a grep for stuff, just like before. Now, if we swap out the standard system grep for our own, you're going to see that the functionality is about the same. All right, we're doing a grep for stuff. If I change that to an uppercase, I'm going to get 1. If I change it to grep-I, I'm going to get a case-insensitive version of my stuff search. I did go ahead and remove the need for a -r for ours just to make it simpler to search in folders. And that is probably a really good point to start with here. This is a very simplified version of the command we're building. We're basically going to set it up so that it can look in files. We're going to make it be able to look in a piped input stream. And then the one argument we are going to implement is -I for case insensitivity. This is really just a small project to show how something like this could be built. Assumptions I'm making: I am on Linux. If you want the smoothest experience here, you should obviously be using the same OS I am. If you're on Windows, there's nothing about this project that I think you shouldn't be able to build, but your actual compilation process might be a little bit different. I will also be using VS Code, and I provide starter files for C++ in VS Code as part of the video. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to rm that grep binary. So right out of the gate, what you should have is if you download the starter project, which will be in the video description, you should have a .gitignore, you should have a list of test files, and you should have a .vscode. I can't cat it, it's a directory, have to ls it. So you should have a .vscode directory that will have, importantly, a tasks.json. So tasks.json is C++'s way to do, build activities and other automated activities in your workspace. With this setup, Control-Shift-B will automatically run the G++ compiler. Against star.cpp, it will compile a file called grep, a binary called grep, and then it's going to come down here and run it against our test files directory with a search string of stuff1. This is not every test that we could have, but this is going to get some of the basics and just make it really easy to, again, Control-Shift-B and do a build of your project. I'll also show you how to do this by hand if you're using another IDE or editor and you just want to be able to do your compilation by hand or do it over there. I will show you the by hand command to do this. All right, so let's go ahead and fire up VS Code. And I've gotten some feedback around the font. So let me go ahead and All right, let's try that. All right, now we've got a nice big blocky font size. So the first thing I like to do most of the time is just get a really basic configuration out there so that we can make sure the build and compilation works correctly. So we're going to go ahead and just do int main argc arg hang on. Int argc and char star argv, and we're just going to make it do a standard cout and testing. And it's complaining because I haven't included IOStream. Okay, so I'm going to use my Control-Shift-B, and I get my testing successfully. Let's go ahead and do the manual compilation. This is the one time I'm going to do this as part of this video. So we're going to do G++ and star.cpp, or you could just do main.cpp -o, and we're going to say grep is your output. And now we have a grep file that was just generated. If we just want to confirm that this wasn't generated by the other process, we can call it mini grep. All right, cool. And we have our mini grep. And if we run mini grep, we're just going to get testing. All right, I'm going to go ahead and clean that out. But if you need the manual command, it is G++ main.cpp -o mini grep. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the main code. So we've got a few different includes that we're going to need. We're going to need to include fstream. We are going to need to include file system. We are going to need to include string, as well as unistd.h, and include algorithm. All right. And then the first thing we're going to build is a little helper function to do some string to lower stuff. So let's just go ahead and get that out. So string _to _lower, and it's going to take a standard string str. And then we're going to use a transform. So std transform. And I'm just going to make some space there. str.begin, str.end, str.begin, and then next line, not critical for functionality, but good for visibility. We're going to do unsigned char C, and we are going to return std to lower C. And that'll be used later in our case insensitivity configuration. All right, and then we're just going to return str. All right, for the rest of the program, we now have that available. So now we're going to go ahead and just stub out our two major functions. So the two things that we need to be able to do are search files and search output. So we're going to say void search files, and that's going to take a standard string search string and search path and a bool for ignore case. Okay. And then we're also going to do a void search output, which will take a string search string and a bool ignore case. And then we will come down here and let's just go ahead and add some output here. So standard cout, and we're going to just say search files called. Okay. And here we're going to say search output called. Okay. So we've got some stubbed out methods here that are not actually doing anything yet, but they will. Now we get to get down into some of our logic. So we're going to go ahead and collect, do a bool ignore case and set that to false. So we're starting out with ignore case as false. We are going to do a standard string for search string and a standard string for search path. And then we're also going to start with a valid arg count. Arg count of 2. We're going to use that for some validations later. And then we're going to get into some of our logic. So the first thing in the program here would normally be our case insensitive check, but I'm actually going to skip that, and we're going to get some basic functionality up first. So we're just going to split between the two functions. So we're going to say if not is addy, file number, actually don't think that's file number, stdin. Then we're going to do search output and search string, and we will go ahead and pass in our ignore case. We're not using it yet, but we'll pass it. And then we're going to say else if argc is greater than or equal to valid arg count. That's why we did that. Then we are going to say if ignore case, and this will make sense in a minute. Search path is equal to argv3, else search path is equal to argv2. All right, so argv is obviously our string of arguments being passed into the program. argv0 is the first, is the program name itself. So argv0 is always going to be the actual grep command. argv1, in this case, if we go back to how grep works, argv1 is going to be our search string. So argv1 is right here. But if we pass in -i, if we pass in a case insensitivity argument, then argv1 is the case insensitivity argument, and argv2 is the search string, and then argv3 is the location. So that's what's going on here, is search path, the location. If ignore case, if there's a -i, then that is now argv3. All right, and then we can search files and pass in search string, search path, and ignore case. All right, and then else we're going to do a usage print. Basically, you didn't use the tool correctly. So instead of coming up with that on my own here, I'm just going to run the grep command, and you notice it gives us this nice little help output. I'm going to copy that into our program and just wrap some couts around it. Oh. And it looks like I double quoted over there. And then I'm just going to do the same thing here. All right. And I think it's probably not liking something. I probably didn't line up a curly brace somewhere correctly. Usage grep options file. Just going to compile and let it tell me. Expected primary expression. Here it is. Missed a double quote. All right, are we happy now? Hey, it worked. All right. So I get search files called in testing, and I can just go ahead and remove the testing now that that's no longer required. So there's a little more logic down here, but let's go ahead and we're just going to code out the search files option. That'll be our next one here. So in search files, let's get rid of search files called because that is no longer needed. We're going to say std if stream input file input underscore file. We're going to do std string line std string search underscore line. And then we're going to say for const auto file, and we're going to use std file system and the directory iterator search path. So we're taking in a search path, we're going to look through that search path, and just at a super high level, we're basically going to open every file and then iterate through it and then print out the lines that match our search value. All right, so we're going to say input file.open file.path if input file.isOpen. So basically just do a check here and make sure that things are in the state that we expect them to be in. Then we're going to do a while get line input file line, and we're going to say it already did that for me. I did not have to type it, which means when I did type it, I messed it up. If ignore case, then we're going to do a search line equals string to lower line. So in other words, if we want to ignore case, we're basically just going to set both sides to lower, and we'll set the other one to lower in a moment. But for our initial sort of ignore case use case, we're just setting both sides to lower, and then we're comparing. And if not ignore case, then search line is equal to line. All right, and then finally, we're going to say if search line dot find search string is not equal to std string npos. And this is probably a part that's a little bit unintuitive. So what we're doing is we're finding an index for search string in search line. And if that index equals anything other than npos, which is the end of the string, then we're returning a success. That's basically what that's doing. End pause is, it's not the end of the string. It's, let me see, because I want to say that correctly. All right, end pause represents no position or not found, not the end of the string. So if this is anything other than no position or not found, then it's going to return a success and carry on. So here we have if search line.find is not equal to end pause, then we just do a std cout line and std endl. All right, and why would we not do a cout of search line? Why are we going back to doing line? Well, in this scenario, search line, the reason we're creating two variables to begin with is because search line has now potentially been lowercased. And we're trying to do a case-insensitive search, not a string manipulation. Grep, if it's working correctly, should not change text. It should just find text for us. So now, if I rerun my build, you can see down here, we are successfully getting stuff 4, 5, and 6. And that is returning successfully. All right. Now, we need to add just a little bit more housekeeping here. So we're going to do an else. And do some CAir. Unable to open file. This should never happen, but that's why we code in errors. All right, and then down here, input file dot not clear, close. All right, just gonna build it again. Okay, and that did something interesting. So we just introduced a bug. Let's take a look. So if input file is open, while if search line.find search string and pause. So you'll notice down here, it printed out everything. It didn't just print out the things that had stuff 1 in them. We got everything in the output, which means that this is consistently returning true. Let's do some troubleshooting. So what we're going to do here is we are going to just do a cout with search string and search string and std endl. And we're going to do the same for search line. And let's just see what they are in the loop. And then for now, not what I meant to do. We're just going to comment those out. Okay. So that's interesting. So search string came in as a blank. And coming in as a blank, it successfully, it basically found blank in every single one, which makes sense. So let's see why search string would have come in as a blank. So we've got search string up here. We've got search string down here. Just for kicks, let's go ahead and we're going to move this up. We're going to find out if it's getting blanked out in this method or if it's just always blank. All right, so it's blank coming into the method. All right, that makes sense. So we know that's happening. We can go ahead and get rid of this extra logging. We no longer need it. And let's go to the other end and just look at what we're passing in. So we're still calling grep stuff1 test files. So those are getting passed in correctly. That part of it's fine, or at least it looks fine at first view here. Let's see, search output. So search file, search string. It is potentially blank because we are not doing our manipulation in here to get those values. So let's go ahead and go back and finish up the main method now that we've got our downstream methods to actually work with here. All right. So here we're going to start by checking for our case insensitivity. We're going to go ahead and get that value. So we're going to say if std string -i dot find argv1 is not equal to std string npos, then ignore case is equal to true. Search string is equal to string to lower argv2 and valid arg count plus plus. So we're basically iterating. So we're saying if there's a -i, if there's a case insensitive flag, then go ahead and do ignore case true, set your search string to lower, and then increase the valid arg count by 1. All right, then we'll do our else. And in that scenario, search string is just equal to argv1. Okay. So this should now give us a search string of stuff. All right. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And uncomment. And we now return stuff1. And if we come in here and just do stuff, oh yeah, it doesn't like building if you're on the JSON. All right, then we get our list of stuff 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. All right, and then let's go ahead and see if our -i is working. So again, we haven't done our pipe operators yet, but let's just do our basics. So /grep, the / is important so that we're hitting the one that's in our project, not the system grep. So we're going to say stuff and then test files. All right, and that is working. Now, if I do a -i, I now get all of them, including the case, the ones with uppercase, versions of stuff. And just a reminder, if I cat out the test2, we do have a bunch of other things that are not stuff in this file, just random things I threw in. So stuff is, it is actually working correctly and filtering the things that we want it to filter. So let's go ahead and go work on our search output, because that one is not, not wired up correctly yet. So if I come up here to, oh no, down here. Let's go ahead and work on search output. So this one's actually going to be a little bit simpler. We're going to do standard string input. Let's see, how did I case that? Didn't. All right, input line. And std string search line. All right, so here we're going to do a while std cin. We're going to get line std cin and input line. And then here we're going to say if ignore case, then search line is equal to string to lower input line. Else we're going to say search line is input line. Okay. And then it's as simple as if search line dot find search string is not equal to string npos, then std cout input line std endl. All right, and I've got a string to lower q. That is not what I wanted. All right, so our standard test still works, but let's go ahead and go see if our new use case is functional. So what we should be able to do here is we should now be able to pipe into our new grep command, and then grep for stuff. And it works. We get all of the stuffs that are not case, that are aligned with the case we just passed in. Let's go ahead and do a grep-i, and now we get everything with stuff. And if I change that to things, I now get things. So there are obviously a lot more features in the actual grep program. It's actually pretty extensive. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. But that is going to be all we implement today. So we have at this point implemented the ability to grep things in files. We've implemented the ability to grep things coming in off of a pipe. And we have implemented a basic case insensitivity. So hopefully this was a good example of something fun you could do with C++. If you like the video, if you like this kind of content or enjoy things around AI, robotics, or other fun tech topics, please like and subscribe. And with that, until next time.